You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
Do you need a car? Been shopping only to be turned down because of bad credit, low credit, no credit, bankruptcy, or divorce? Guess what? Today's your lucky day, because now you can buy a car, truck, or SUV, just about any vehicle. It's true. Bad credit doesn't matter. No credit doesn't matter. Bankruptcy or divorce, it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, your job is your ticket to your new vehicle. We're Auto Credit Express, and we've helped thousands of people just like you. Antonio H. told us, great company, got me connected, and the day I went in, I drove off in the car I wanted. 100% worth your time. Need a car? Get started now and drive off as early as today. Just text FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911 right now to get started. That's FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911. Auto financing the easy way. Text FINANCE to 357-911.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
Liz?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So, hey, Rick, here's a countdown for 5, and then we'll begin. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. It is November 12th. Welcome to the Veterans Day edition of For Immediate Release. I'm Liz Feld, and I'm joined here today by my partner, Billy O'Reilly. And we've been talking for the last couple of days about Veterans Day and its significance and why this year is particularly important to all of us. So, Billy, I know you spent a lot of yesterday attending local veterans activities, and it'd be great if you could share with us what you saw and what the mood was and what your thoughts were.
And it's so funny, Liz, because when you said it's November 12th, I thought, oh, you've got the date wrong because I've had November 6th in my head so much about the elections, and it seems like it's like 2 days ago, but it's that long. But yeah, I mean, it's the day after November 11th. It's November 12th, and quite a November 11th it was. I should just add in advance that we're going to have a terrific guest, an old friend, on tonight that a lot of you know or know of, love or hate, indifferent to, whatever it is. Rick Wilson, who was a preeminent Republican political consultant, who is not a fan of President Trump and has a best-selling book out there. He's #1 New York Times best-selling author of Everything That Trump Touches Dies. And Rick is super entertaining. We're looking forward to having him on in a little bit. But yeah, Liz, I mean, yes, you know what killed me? I'll just take a turn here. So the 100th anniversary, of, the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month, everybody should know that. And I didn't see a lot of build up towards it in the press. And in fact, there was virtually no build up to it in the press. And it turned out that at 11 o'clock on Sunday, I was teaching a CCD class, a religious education class, which my friends growing up will get a great kick out of. And I thought, okay, we'll go outside at 11 o'clock for the bell. And I asked the kids are in 7th grade, and it's like, who knows anything about World War I? Was that the one with Hitler? Was that the one there? I mean, really nothing. No. But they haven't gotten to European history yet, so that's certainly understandable. When they get to 10th and 11th grade and say the same thing, which they often do, that's not so great. But so anyway, I walked them through for about 30 minutes. I should have been teaching about religion, but I walked them through World War I, all the different developments and the rest of it. Also that I could say at 10:55. Now we're going to go outside. I talked about the ringing bells in 1918 all across the world, and the bells ringing. I said, now we're going to go outside and we're going to listen to the bells. It was cold, and we were in New York, and they're like, I don't have a coat. Line up. And we all went outside, and I said, we're going to do a minute of silence. And this could be an unruly bunch, but they were very, very good. And they went out there and went silent for a full minute. Not one bell. Not a bell. 20 churches within, a few miles, and not a single bell in the air.
And the village hall, the same thing.
Nothing too. And it just, we're not supposed to forget this stuff. And I just was shocked by it. I was shocked. And I felt like a fraud too, because I had promised them bells. But I don't know when they stopped, but I remember as a kid on Veterans Day at 11 a.m., those bells rang everywhere. And it was, but anyway, a lot of people did remember, so that was good. Mm-hmm.
Well, and there was, the Veterans Day parade took place in Manhattan, as it always does, yesterday, but there were certainly no local parades around where I live in Westchester, and I don't know if there were any out in your neck of the woods either. And it's particularly because it was or it is the 100th anniversary, that's very disappointing. And we talk about this a lot, you know, that there's a tremendous amount of lip service given to veterans around Memorial Day and Veterans Day. But when it comes down to a daily practice, and by practice I mean a daily honoring of the services, veterans, I mean, that's disappointing because the kids just need to know their history. But I will tell you what was very interesting to me and encouraging, and I don't know if you read any statistics about this, but there were 150 congressional candidates this year who are veterans who ran for office, which, you know, actually the truth was not that notable many years ago. About 30 years ago, half of all members of Congress were actually military veterans. Half.
Wow. That's amazing. Yep.
It is. And then here we are now, you know, out of that 150, 16 were successful across both, you know, it's bipartisan. So, you know, it will be great to have, not just great, but critically important to have those voices at the table when we talk about, obviously about national security, but also other issues that have never been addressed appropriately around veterans care, the VA, how the VA is run, and all the benefits that our veterans are supposed to get. So I think that's a very good sign.
I think a lot of the some of the trouble in America, some of the underlying current that's not healthy and hasn't been for a while, is the lack of military service among people of privilege in the country. And I grew up privileged and didn't serve. My father did. My father was, as you know, 10th Mountain Division. Your father was a pilot in Europe. But it became something that you didn't do. It wasn't what you do between high school. It was, you went to college and it didn't happen. I mean, if it was a big war that broken out, I fell in, you know, I registered for the draft in 84, and it was pretty quiet time. Or what did I do? 18 or no, in 81, 80, I guess. But there's, you know, you have low income people and middle income people that fight our wars, and you have a class that doesn't. You know, you counter that with the British, and they, you know, the aristocracy there, which we don't have here, which is a great American thing, but the aristocracy there still has the sense of honor and the sense of duty, and it goes for generations, 10, 12, 15 generations, where no matter who you are, you know, you do your service. And I think that's something that's missing in the country. I think it's something that brings the great divide that certainly was exacerbated in the Vietnam War and continues still, even though there's no draft right now. It's a bifurcated system, and it's not a healthy thing. That's just my quick rant of the evening.
And do you know, I'd be curious, I mean, and Rick actually may have an answer to this, what the American sentiment is around reinstating the draft. I support that.
So do I, and people look at me like I'm crazy when I say it. I remember Charlie Rangel he supported the draft. He was a liberal Democrat in Congress, but had fought in Korea, and he argued it throughout his career. And I agreed, and there should be no exemptions in my book. There'd be no exemptions. There's no college, no bone spurs, no, if you're, I mean, obviously if you can't physically do it, you don't do it, but, it's one nation. It's gotta be one nation again. And, you know, maybe it's the way we were raised a little bit, you know, coming from we're children of veterans, but it's, you know, it's a forgotten thing. You reminded me, Liz, I watched a veterans parade many years ago in Manhattan, and it was pouring rain. It was a very significant date. Maybe it was the 50th after World War II? I think it was the 50th. And I went out there. It was pouring rain. I went out with my wife and a friend, and we stood along Fifth Avenue in New York, and we were not in the busiest section of Fifth Avenue. We were uptown a little bit, but there were 3 people per 100 yards, and the buses were going by with veterans in there. Some of them who had been in VA hospitals since probably the teens or certainly since World War II, looking out the windows. And I just, you know, you just, come on. But a lot of people did celebrate nicely yesterday. A lot of people did. The outpouring of support in a lot of areas, which is great.
Yeah, I agree with you. There wasn't quite the media coverage, although there was certainly wall-to-wall coverage of Trump's time in Paris and the remarks that Macron made and Trump's own remarks and the fact that he missed visiting the cemetery because of the weather and he couldn't helicopter over. But But other than that, I always like these ceremonies at the local level. It's a great way for the community to stay together. As you and I have talked so much about the fabric of our lives, what that means, and whether it's the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts and the Little League kids coming in their uniforms just for 15 minutes. It is a wonderful way to bring people together. So
it is, and it's all very local too. And I was sorry for interrupting. I was going to say, if it weren't for the VFWs, if it weren't for those posts, would these things happen locally, or do they have to throw their own party? To put it crudely, like we had veterans out there in front of our memorial in my town in Mount Kisco, New York, and they were out there for 24 hours in the cold throughout the night. But it was done by the VFW post. Like, if there weren't the VFW post, would other people remember? Would non-veterans remember? I don't know.
Well, I didn't realize until I read and saw a lot of stuff over this weekend that there's no World War I memorial at all in Washington, D.C. There's a National Museum out in Kansas City, but there is no physical structure in Washington, which is striking. And I guess it's being worked on now, but it is. And I think thank God for these folks who are committed to making sure that we remember and honor and pass along the history to our kids and then their kids beyond that by doing it through a museum. It actually sounds. I'd love to go see it.
That's what I was trying to get. I was trying to get my arms around, or have the kids yesterday get their arms around, just some semblance of how big World War I was. The history at large, but to their world now. And, it goes just beyond I was having them picture the kids in the class that aren't there, because the guys that didn't come home never married and never had families and never had children and grandchildren. And to also all the ramifications of what happened afterwards with the Soviet Union, with communism that cost us 100 million souls around the world, with the recarving of the Middle East. I mean, to understand history today, you have to understand that. Like, you have to get some sense of it. I also asked how many people do you think died? And I ran through Vietnam War numbers and Revolutionary War numbers and a few others. And they said, the guesses were 5,000 died. Another one was 100,000. And then someone said, 45,000, maybe they just, they're kids. But, when I hit them with 16 million, I don't know if they knew what that meant, but they got to get it someplace. They got to hear it someplace.
So, speaking of history, there's a new Revolutionary War Museum in Philadelphia that's supposed to be spectacular. And Jerry Lindfest, who just passed away sometime this past year, was the primary philanthropist behind it. He actually owned the Philadelphia papers. He was a big cable executive, and he gave a lot of his money to charity, and this was a passion for his for years. So he built it. He lived to see it done. And I don't know if he's been down there, but it's.
I haven't been. I'd love to see it. And it's I love. I mean, anywhere you see those memorials, I love to pop off in towns if you're on vacation, and so many towns have those memorials in the center, and to go and make your kids look at them and see them. Liz, did I ever tell you the story about going down to Arlington with my two elder daughters, a few years ago? Did I tell you that story?
No, I don't remember.
I did a column on it. Anybody, our age or approximately that will get a kick out of it, or older will get a kick out of this. So we went down to, we were looking at Robert E. Lee's house, at Arlington, and going through the house, and I was talking about him walking upstairs and making them hear the boot nails, the hobnail boots from downstairs. Everyone was listening, and he was pacing back and forth to decide whether to fight for his state or for the Union. And I tried to make it real, and they were of an age where they could, imagine things. And we went outside to catch the bus, and the bus was gone, and we had about 40 minutes to wait for the next one. So I was a new stepfather, so I'm trying to think of interesting things, and so I'm a little bit corny. So
trying to win them over with a trip to Arlington National Cemetery. Don't bury the lead here. Must have been a whopping.
I've never succeeded. No. But anyway, we hit the airspace and a couple other ones. But so we're sitting there on the steps, and we looked out at acres and acres of graves, obviously. And they were rolling their eyes already. And I said, look out there at the graves. And I said, the same conversation, out there, there's names, there are boys out there and girls out there that never get visited, they're names that nobody remembers because same thing. They didn't come back. They didn't marry. They didn't have children, and nobody even knows they existed anymore. I said, well, while we're waiting for the bus, why don't you guys walk out there and find one gravestone and one name and remember that name always? And, you know, the eyes are rolling. I'm like, seriously, you'll appreciate this one day, and, you know, that kind of thing. So they go out there and they walk just a little bit out there, not very far, and they say, okay, this one. And so I say, great. So I take a pen and pad and I walk over and look down. It was Audie Murphy. Who, if you don't know his name, he's the most famous veteran in history. You know, Audie Murphy, who appeared in his own Audie Murphy story. You know, Medal of Honor winner.
Terrific.
You know, probably the most celebrated soldier in American history, and that's the one they chose, which was amazing. I did a column about it, and I always got a kick out of that. Can you tell us about your father, Liz?
By the way, in the 70s. I don't know if you did.
I'm
but
sorry, Liz?
Girls wore those. You know, we all wore those POW bracelets in the 70s.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yep.
Those have been replaced or by, you know, the rubber bracelets of your choice for different causes. But I haven't seen any military bracelets like that in years.
I haven't seen it since then. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no,
Can you talk a little bit about your dad, Liz, and what he did during the war? I still call World War II the war, but, you know, we're dating ourselves.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, Billy, like your father, he volunteered. I mean, he raced to enlist when he was actually underage, and finally, you know, he enlisted in the Navy. He was a fighter pilot. He actually flew in the Pacific, and for several years, and he ultimately actually became a commercial pilot when he came back, and then he became an aviation defense attorney. But, you know, you and I have talked about how our fathers never told war stories, literally and figuratively. I mean, I remember once or twice hearing my father talk about his one best friend who was still living, and they remained friends until they both died 20 years ago. But never about, there were no stories about combat. There were certainly no woe is me stories. But what was so inextricably linked in his life were his service and his faith. And I don't know if that was a coincidence or if, you know, he'd always been a practicing Catholic even before he enlisted in the Navy. But obviously his belief in God and his gratitude for coming back whole and, you know, with such a great, the ultimate American opportunity, it was never lost on him. I mean, there wasn't a day that he didn't drop to his knees and pray and thank God. But
I can't. By the way, did he fly a Corsair or a Hellcat? Do you know what his plane was?
Which was one of the worst. 24s and 25.
So he's a bomber pilot. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
He was a bomber pilot.
Yep.
And, you know, of course, it sounds so sexy when you talk about it, you know, and of course we won the war and everything, but it never occurred to me till I was much older that the magnitude of responsibility and guilt that he must have felt. Now, obviously, he was aiming for the enemy, but nonetheless, when you're taking lives, which he was doing every single day as a bomber pilot, the toll that's got to take on your soul is incalculable. Incalculable.
And what you do with your imagination, yeah.
And all these veterans, you know, what they certainly did not lack was perspective. I mean, my dad knew what a real problem was and what a fake problem was.
Right.
So when you told him you were having the worst day of your life because you failed a math test, I mean, there wasn't a lot of indulging in those, you know, in those conversations.
Right.
But he's so proud of this country, and he was till the day he died. And he wouldn't have missed the local veteran service for anything. I mean, he came back and, like so many men of that generation, was a volunteer firefighter and served on his local board and did all the things that
he was a mayor, wasn't he?
He was a mayor, and that stuff just came naturally, as you know. I mean, your dad did the same thing.
Except running for mayor. He wouldn't have done that. But you're right.
Mayor.
But they came back and they realized how good they had it. You know, I mean, this was the proverbial Brady. It was I guess they saw what humanity is capable of, and you come back and you do the good stuff. You know, you raise families and you work hard, and but you don't even talk much about what your father did. I knew that he was a pilot. I knew he was a pilot in the war, but you know, you keep that one under wraps too. I mean, I guess you got it from him. Excuse me for the cough.
And he just lived such a full life long before he got married and had kids. When he didn't even get married until he was 37, he had started having, you know, and then at 6 kids.
Father, yeah.
later on, so really he did the kinds of things that most people don't ever do in their whole lives, but the stuff that he did between the time that he was 18 and 37, you could really pack in 10 lives for somebody else. But no, I don't think they ever felt the need to talk about it. And it went way beyond humility. I think obviously some of it was just pain. But more than that, it was that was what you did. You served, you came back, and then you went to work and raised your family and took care of your community. I guess, again, I think very closely tied to faith, which is something that you and I have talked about is lacking right now in the secularization of this country.
Yeah, no, I think there's no question about that. But also what I find missing, and I was hoping actually to talk about this with Rick. I don't know whether he may have trouble getting in, so we'll just keep talking. If he joins us, great. If not, we can get him for the next show. The lack of like words like honor and dignity, self-sacrifice, self-control, those things are so out of vogue now. They're not considered the virtues anymore by so many. And culturally that's become in effect. You have the psychologists, the people who say, take care of yourself first, that me generation. It's take care of me. What do you do for yourself? What do you do for yourself? And it's not the way that generation lived at all. It's not the way I was raised at all. But now you're almost wrong for why would you do that? You got to take care of yourself is always the message that's blaring out there on television for kids. You could be everything you could be if you take care of yourself and you do it. But where is that honor? And that it's still there. It's somewhere within us, I believe, but it's being suppressed right now, I think, by some cultural forces that come out of secularism, frankly. It's, which is unfortunate.
Well, and yeah, I obviously agree with you, and also I think a lack of sense of a greater good. And I'm trying to remember since the George W. Bush election in 2004, when the security moms all turned out to vote. Remember, we've gone from the soccer moms to the security moms. If we've had a movement like that at all around national security and honor and country, or if we really haven't, despite the fact that we still have thousands and thousands of troops fighting in Afghanistan and around the rest of the world, if there's any sense of that, or we just get so complacent with our sense of individual liberty and safety.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. And the other thing I often wonder about, and I know that people have difficulties in life, and we all trying to pay our bills, and I certainly struggle at times. But it's almost like here in America we have it too good. I mean, we find things to complain about. I mean, I look at the agenda, and I'll be a little partisan here on this one, but I look at the agenda from the left, and they're arguing luxury items. They're arguing stuff. I mean, and some of the things I just flat out disagree with. I don't get what they want ultimately. I don't understand it. I mean, it's like, do you want, it's just more of X, or there's always a reason to complain. There's always a victim. There's always something, I know people feel strongly about those issues. I don't mean to insult them, but what happened? Like I always say in my mind, and then what? And then what? Like, what about the basics of life? About families and raising things, and hard work is a good thing, right? Is it still a good thing? Like, you work hard, and those are things that I knew. They, and there are things that maybe the Republican Party missed the boat. I mean, the Republican Party has utterly forgotten about fiscal responsibility, about personal responsibility, and I'd say that including with this president, about how you act and how you carry yourself. All those things were once the brand, and they seem to have slipped out the window. It's just power politics now. It's who's in charge. Don't let the other guy get a win. And what's the next fight?
Well, it's very much of a zero-sum game. These issues are. If you have something I don't have, I'm losing. You're either pro-life or you're for late-term abortions. You're either for, the wealth redistribution completely. Rich people are terrible, and they should be giving all their money to poor people. I could go down the whole list, and that people, it's referred to, identity politics or radicalization of politics or polarization. At the end of the day, it's just about selfishness. To your point about getting a little partisan here, I don't understand that. The idea that there really is no thought given to 10 years from now and 20 years from now and 30 years from now and what we're doing, other than maybe on the bigger issue of climate change. You hear people talk about, the world coming to an end. But certainly when it comes to infrastructure, education, the debt being the number one problem that's not being tackled. The rest of this is going to become irrelevant. And we've talked about this many times, but obviously not enough if we don't get a handle on this. And yet we still have plenty of people out there on the left screaming for free tuition, which we know there's no such thing.
Right.
And Medicare for all and all kinds. So we've got to.
Single payer. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Single payer. So I don't know when we're going to get any serious adults in the room who are actually going to solve these problems. But coming off of the election, I'm not encouraged at all. We had a great conversation last week with Matthew Feld about what we could expect if the Democrats took over the House. Could we even get one great bipartisan bill done, something big, and could Trump work with the Democrats? And it's worse than it was the day before the election, don't you think?
Oh, I think definitely. I saw something just before we came on, a story about how the Democrats are planning to come in there and target, impeachment and other things for Trump and other people around him. And, it's all investigatory bodies and the rest of it. And I thought, you don't. Didn't you learn from us? We did that and we completely blew majorities that we had in the 80s. We blew huge opportunities by fighting the other guy rather than looking, for solutions for the average family. It just seems like such a waste. I think it is going to get worse, Liz. I agree. And I think it's really unfortunate. And you know what's going to happen. If the Democrats go that way, Trump and the Republicans are going to go, that way too. And, we don't get anywhere. And meanwhile, $22 trillion of debt is now approaching. And, all we're talking about is how much more to spend. And you have the Republicans that are adding about $1 trillion in debt, annually while they control all three houses. It's crazy. It's madness. It's madness.
It is madness. And then again, no immigration bill. No infrastructure. I heard Mitch McConnell the day after the election in his press conference when he was asked about all the subpoenas and investigations that are going to come out of the House. And he said, listen, learn from our mistakes. Back in the 90s, he called it presidential harassment of Bill Clinton. But ultimately, Clinton's numbers went way up and the popularity and the ratings or approval ratings for Congress went way, way down. And he was cautioning the Democrats just by saying this backfires. You think it's maybe you feel good because you got on the evening news that night and you got a headline, but really first of all, it's no way to govern, but also it's not good politics. If there are legitimate things, then go after them. But the rest of this, they're teeing up 150 subpoenas and investigations already, something to that effect. Ridiculous.
Right, exactly. I used to tell people years ago, I've forgotten this advice was in politics and on campaigns. I used to say, do what's smart, not what's emotionally satisfying. It was, when you're working on a campaign, it's so tempting to do what feels right, to lash out or to take the shot, and it doesn't win you anything. People are watching. And I forget that myself.
Yeah.
I fall into that trap too. But it does seem, the way we're going. Where do you see, Liz, the Republican Party? And I know in some parts of the country it's still quite strong and maybe, arguably growing stronger. In other areas like the Northeast, we just got wiped out. In New England, there's only one member of Congress left, and we just happened once before. I think that happened in 2008. But in the Northeast, like the Republican Party in New York is really gone as we know it. It may not ever exist the same way because we've now lost both houses of the legislature. Redistricting will occur, and that will be it. Will be California or Illinois. And so where do you see, what would be your take on how to rebuild this thing, if at all, or, is there a solution to it? Where does the Republican Party go? It's all over the place right now.
Well, I think you have to start with one question, which is it really Trump's Republican Party? And if it is it that just for the near term? But after 2020 and beyond, we're either reverting to the old Republican Party or completely rebuilding, reconstructing. Because I don't think you could find agreement among 5 people right now in one room what the Republican Party is and what it stands for. It's certainly not fiscal responsibility. Maybe on the issues of the Supreme Court and some national security, you'd get consent, you'd get agreement as far as priorities. But that's it.
Yeah.
That's
it.
And
Yep.
What I'd like to see, and this is why I think the work you're doing with the Federalist Party is so important, is a complete return to really the fundamentals of federalism and what the Republican Party used to be, which was local control over as many decisions as you could possibly have, and that we reverted to the traditional role of the federal government as being, providing for the national security of the country and providing a safety net for the most vulnerable among us, but basically getting out of the business of legislating everything else. And I think notionally you still have Republicans who think, oh yeah, I'm all for that. But then, you can't take away the stuff that they've gotten very comfortable with, whether it's their earmark or their spending or just bringing home some bacon so that they can get reelected. So there's no long-term planning or long-term thinking here. And the fact that we can't get any Republicans to stand up with some courage and say, I'm throwing myself down right here, throwing down the gauntlet right here around entitlement reform. It has to happen. I know the Republicans led on that, and we had enough Republicans who said, I don't care if I'm ever going to get reelected again. I'm a sitting senator. I got 6 years to do this, and I'm going to make it my legacy to get this done. That would be probably the best thing any Republican could do. The best thing. I think the biggest problem the party has, or maybe the two biggest problems, are one, as we heard from Matthew last week, they don't know how to talk to voters. They don't know how to communicate their agenda. As Matthew said, we haven't made the economic message for why free education isn't going to work, or that that's not the best way to go. We haven't made the economic case for health care. It's just been very lazy. The Democrats, frankly, out-messaged them. So we haven't talked to we're not talking to young people properly, and these women are just angry, and so many of these Republican women now, I don't know what it's going to take to get them back in the fold. Because they're angry about Trump, and they're angry about,
No, I think that's exactly right. You touched on, I have a column running in Newsday today about that, your first point, specifically in New York, which is that the Republicans held on to the state Senate for almost a century. There was only a couple of years where they didn't have control. And in New York, that's no easy feat. It's a state that's 2-1 Democrat. Republicans are only 23% of the registration in New York, and that number is dropping. Democrats are about 51, I think, or 52, and then independents fill the gap. So Republicans held on forever. But the trouble is when you do that, you get compromised. And there were certain issues that were off the table for Republican candidates because you couldn't talk about phasing out rent control or rent stabilization, for example, in the city, because you had members that would move if you did that. You couldn't talk about the insane giveaways to unions here because you had certain unions that were backing the Republicans. And when you find yourself unable to talk about certain things and you find yourself compromised, and we find yourself compromised, you can no longer wield moral authority, in my opinion. And that's the thing that's missing the most. And I agree with you, the message is missing. But when you can't reach into your quiver for the moral authority arrow, that's, as a consultant or as a candidate, you got nothing. Like if you're not being better than the other guy and you're not you're speaking on principle and have something to back it up and show people why your side is principled, A, B, and C, you're out of ammo. You got nothing. And that to me is the biggest crisis with the Republican Party now is the moral authority is gone. And I think that stems a lot from the president. And I'm sorry, I know a lot of supporters of the president are probably listening. And I do hope he does well, but I think that's a real problem that we need to behave better, starting from the top. And we need to keep our word on fiscal, on trade, on all kinds of things. We need to keep our word, especially on fiscal, I think, on fiscal discipline. But it's where we are. It's where we are.
Well, I did look closely at the numbers in the New York State race, because I know this is a pattern that we're seeing around the country. Is it, so Andrew Cuomo won all 5 boroughs around New York City. So for those of you who don't live there, he won 1.6 million votes, right, Billy? 5 boroughs, those 5 boroughs, and And that was it. And the entire rest of the state, the whole rest of New York State, 47 counties, Molinaro won. Now, by a slimmer margin, by 5,600 votes.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you have detail of two different countries completely. And I mean that within the state, two different countries. And it's
two different countries, yeah.
It's been like that, but it's getting worse. And I know it's the same case in California. And I think down in California, are they down to 8 Republican congressmen for the whole delegation?
That's just amazing.
5? It's just staggering.
It's staggering. And the thing is, it won't hold forever in most places because there's only 2 options right now. I mean, there are some third parties that are out there trying really hard, including the Federalist Party of America, the FLUG. But right now it's a 2-party system. It's set up that way. But it is staggering, Liz. And in 2014 also, where Rob Astorino, who was a guest on here a few weeks ago, won 46 out of the 62 counties in New York, won 41% of the vote, but got 17% in New York City, which is about New York City and the suburbs are 12 million people. It's 12 million versus 8 million upstate. And upstate is hollowed out. Upstate, for those of you who think of New York as just the city, upstate New York is more like rural Ohio, or Pennsylvania. It's farms, it's agrarian, it's conservative, but it's also boarded up, windows boarded, no paint on houses. 1.2 million upstate New Yorkers have fled New York in 20 years. It's a story that a lot of people understand in the Midwest in particular. But that's right, Liz. I mean, it's a story of two countries within a state, and same in California, same in Ohio, same in Michigan. We see this. You got the rural voter and the urban voter, and the urban centers have gotten so big.
Well, I don't know what the platform is going to be for Republicans running in 2020. If they're all going to line up behind Trump, or if some of them will try to run more independently, I don't know. I mean, as we heard the day after the election, the president was very aggressive in pointing out who had lost, and who he had campaigned for, and he drew a cause and effect. So there, in the case, I don't think it was 20 members of Congress who lost, who would ask him to stay out of their districts. And I don't know that that's what really led to their defeats. But I'm sure there's a lot of teeth gnashing going on right now among consultants. And a lot of these members are not the ones who lost, but the members are going to be up in 2 years again, as it is. So I
think the numbers were right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 44% of the ones that Trump didn't endorse lost, 44. So he got 56, which is not bad, not bad a record for this time of the year. But I don't think that argument that he made early stood the test of the election itself.
Yeah.
Of the actual result.
And it ended up being, the numbers keep growing every day for the Democrats. It looks like they're up to, is it 40 seats that they picked up? The early results.
40, 41.
25, but it's in the 40s, yeah.
It's in the 40s, yeah. No, exactly. And who knows with Florida and Georgia. But it's, but you asked the right question, and that's what every consultant and candidate in America is wondering is what do you do? What do you do? Especially in states that are not overwhelmingly Republican. If you're in, parts of Texas or other states, Republican areas, you could be as pro-Trump as you want, and that's fine, and you get elected. If you're in anything that even approximates a swing state or a swing district, you can't win on either side. If you speak out against the president, you lose a chunk of the base and you're out. And if you speak for the president, you lose because you lose all those suburban women and minorities. And it's this impossible situation. It's a really tricky time. And I think both parties are changing so much, and both are trying to figure out what they are and who they are. And it's just, we have to live through watching it and living it.
Have you seen any head count lately on what Nancy Pelosi's chances are of being reelected Speaker of the House?
I was in the studio with somebody a few days ago who said that she's definitely going to get it. I was hoping that she'd get challenged, like a Tim Ryan or somebody would come in there and make a challenge. But they're talking about it as though it's a done deal. But you always talk about it as though it's a done deal when you're trying to make it a done deal. So you never know what the reality is on the ground. It wouldn't take that many votes to shake her. I mean, because you're going to get the Republicans to vote against her. Maybe they vote for her. The Republicans should should vote for Nancy Pelosi.
That's
Good
right.
Lord.
And it's the same way they're rooting for Hillary Clinton to get in the race again. All of
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Do you think that's true?
I mean, they someone, definitively off the record said that she was running again. I don't think so. I don't see how it's remotely possible. She may be just trying to stay relevant or, doing the trial balloon, but it just seems preposterous. If anybody of that generation is going to run, it would be like Joe Biden, who I don't think runs either. The one person that I think people should watch out for, and I don't mean to give him a plug because I just did 2 races against him where he bashed our brains in, is watch out for Andrew Cuomo. He's not showing up in a lot of the favorite lists among Democrats, but he is a political animal. He is a shark in the water like nobody I've ever seen. I think you've taken a good look at him too, Liz. He is a political force to be reckoned with, and his tactics are ugly. We live in a corrupt state as a result of him, but he does anything to win. And the argument that he may make in those primaries is you need someone like me to take on someone like him. And that could resonate. He's not good on the stump. He makes mistakes in the press. He's not a glad handler at all, but he's checked the liberal and progressive boxes in New York, the gay marriage and, $50 minimum wage, all the stuff that they tend to be pushing these days. And he's got those boxes checked. I would not count him out at all because he is a fierce competitor. He leverages everything.
There's no question,
for
and
power.
he's such a prolific fundraiser. Well, also, when we joked about this only a little bit last week on the phone, I said he couldn't run on his record 4 more years because by every metric, New York's failing. But it doesn't seem to matter to the voters here, and I suppose it wouldn't matter nationally. It's not like scrutiny of his performance in New York State is going to hold him back. New York's considered the most important, even though electorally it's not, electoral college-wise it's not, the most prominent or important state in the country. Now, we haven't elected a president in a long, long time, but he's going to be taken seriously for all the obvious reasons. So I think you're right on the issues, certainly for the left wing of the party. He's a winner. He's a big winner. And of course, again, we've seen many sides of Andrew Cuomo. When he first got elected, he worked with the Republican state Senate here and actually talked the talk of a moderate, but he gave those days up a long time ago.
Yeah, as soon as he had to. I mean, he's a pure political mechanic, and he grew up at his father's knee, and he was his father's campaign manager at age 19 or 20 or 21, and there's no compunction. I mean, he'll pretty much do anything to get ahead, to do what he needs to do, but he's really good at it. I mean, I got to say, watching him in action for these past 8 years, there's some awe of watching just how pure a machine he is. I don't think he sleeps. He just, it's all power politics. And I see a lot of I don't see anybody great in the field out there on the Democratic side. Not one, not a single candidate. And he's a wolf. He'll come in there and eat any sheep alive if he jumps in. I assume he does. The only one that I could see for the Democratic Party that whether they're likely to take this route or not, which I think would be the smart route, would be a Mike Bloomberg, who's just the sheer amount of money he has, could overwhelm anything. But it depends whether the Democrats take that that course. But if it's a traditional, left-wing Democratic field with the candidates that we're talking about now, I wouldn't count him out. People hate him. They hate him, but they fear him. They hate him and they fear him. Yeah, but when he's coming to get you, he's coming to get you.
What are his relationships with the other leading Democrats around the country? Because you don't really see him when there was the confab of Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, even then, which is an interesting.
They don't like it. They don't like him.
In her own.
They know he's the piranha in the tank, and he's always been the piranha in the tank. He'll eat his best friend alive. He is a piranha, and and that's a terrible thing to say, but it's also maybe a compliment depending on how you look at it in politics. But they know that about him. They know he has no loyalty to anybody, so they don't really like him. But at the same time, they may determine that you need somebody like that to take on Trump's Republican Party. Who knows? Maybe he flames out. He flamed out when he ran for governor in 2000, went nowhere, 2000, whatever year that was, 2002, I guess. And but then came back and did a career start again. but he's a very good fundraiser. He knows how to get headlines. And the funny thing is, he's got this long relationship with Donald Trump. He was Donald Trump's real estate attorney when his father was governor, made a lot of money off of it. And he was, Donald Trump was at his bachelor party, and, I'm sure they're still friends and they laugh at night after they bash each other during the day. But it's, I'd watch for him, and it's not myopic being from New York. Just looking at the field nationally, he's going to stand out in some way because he is a force. Anybody else you're looking at? Yeah, go ahead.
With all due respect to Rob and Mark Molinaro, who I think both ran excellent races, and you were part of both of those, but they really did and never wavered on their own principles. Cuomo, the registration advantage in New York State is insurmountable. It just is. And then the dynamic has also only gotten worse, not just in registration, but in the unions and the payouts and the corruption that assured Cuomo's reelection. He still, even though he wasn't even threatened by defeat, refused to debate Mark Molinaro. Now, I don't know if that's just arrogance, how much of that is he's just a little timid. I don't know if that actually contradicts what you're saying about him being so fierce. But I do wonder, he hasn't had a tough race in a long time. He resents when anyone even questions anything. He doesn't deal with the press regularly, as you know. He doesn't do rope lines. He doesn't do retail politics. I wonder in Iowa and New Hampshire how he would do. We haven't seen him. He hasn't had to beg and put a smile on his face for a long time.
He would be, in a traditional debate, he would get killed because he makes mistakes and the rest of it. But this is how I see it anyway. He would get killed. But like Donald Trump would get killed in a traditional Republican debate. And we saw what happened, where Trump went in as Donald Trump, and he was so different and so obnoxious and arrogant and Trump-like and funny to those who like him and detestable to those who don't. But he was interesting, and he was his raw self. Cuomo's capable of that also. He's not as witty as Trump. He's not as funny. I don't think he's not as bright as Trump, but he's got incredible political instincts. And if he goes on there as, one of these is not like the others, I think there's a lane, the same way there was a lane for Trump. But maybe I could be totally wrong. Maybe he decides not to get in. But I think he does. Maybe he gets eaten alive, but I'd be surprised if that happened. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. That's what's fun about politics. You could be wrong 80% of the time. and still have a microphone.
I want to shift gears and talk to you, and if you could put on your reporter hat for a second, because you still are a columnist and a reporter. I wish you'd comment on the dynamic right now which has reached unprecedented lows between the White House press corps and the president. And we saw this play out the day after the election last week in that really what I characterize as a vile exchange in the East Room of the White House between CNN's Jim Acosta and Trump. And frankly, the president also singling out a number of other reporters throughout the course of that afternoon, calling them stupid and uninformed and biased and race, you name it. What do you think the press should do? How should they handle this president? Do you think there's any room here for any sort of a seance or a truce? And what do you think Sarah Huckabee Sanders' role is in improving or managing this relationship right now?
It's a great question, Liz. I'm so glad you asked it. I think we've got about 3 or 4 more minutes left, so I'll try and do my side of it quickly. We talked at the beginning about the words like honor and self-control and self-sacrifice and all those things that used to be kind of axiomatic virtues in America. They were unquestioned. I think that's a great tablet to draw on for this conversation. So you have the White House on one side, and you worked in the Reagan Bush White House on the press side, and then you have the press corps on the other, and both are behaving miserably. Like, let's go back to who's right and who's wrong, but call it as it is. We'll take the press first. Jim Acosta, you've got to be kidding me. He just gets up and starts shouting stuff. CNN has a camera that's positioned on Jim Acosta because it's the Jim Acosta show. He goes in there, and his job is to get a rise out of the president. That's not journalism. He's becoming the news. It's been said a million times this week. But that's not journalism. April Ryan does the same thing. People jump up and they say stuff trying to get into a fight. And that's their side of it. They're wrong on that side, and they need to fix themselves. On the other side, you have a White House, a press secretary who lies all the time, a president who lies all the time, and a combative tone that is not dignified for the country. It makes us look bad. It drives a wedge between us all. We're all fighting the result of it. They own that. And it's not, they each have an obligation to fix themselves. And as I see it. And one has nothing to do with the other. The press each reporter has 100% responsibility for him or herself to behave in a dignified manner and to act like a journalist is supposed to. And the press person has 100% responsibility to act like she should as a dignified press person representing the most powerful office in the world. And the president has 100% responsibility for his thumbs and his tongue. And no one else does. It belongs to each of them individually, and that's where I think we need to get. That's my take.
Yeah. And do you have any expectations that any of this is going to happen? Oh my God! I guess I would say I just don't know when the press. What can you point to the exact time when the press made all of this about them? What cycle was it? 5 years ago? 6 years ago? 10 years ago?
Helen Thomas used to do it.
This battle. They are not.
Yeah, Helen Thomas used to do it. And the thing is, what are they going to have when they're left? But even the press now extends to Saturday Night Live. It extends to Jimmy Kimmel and all the everything. Every TV show has become the left wing, let's be obnoxious to President Trump show. And when he's gone, I don't know what they're going to have left. I don't know when it started, Liz. It's a great question. You may have been there when it started, but it's now beyond belief. I mean, it's now beyond belief. And you can't, each individual has to fix him or herself. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not. And I think you landed on something here with the cameras in the press room, because now every one of these reporters is grandstanding. They are working on their own brand. Many of these the print journalists are also on television now because it's good for their brand, and they're also helping drive sales with the newspapers, all which is fine, sharing their stories on. But it has just created talk about a me first, or look at me. Dynamic that is just not getting, frankly, it's just not also getting to the heart of the matter. We're not getting the kind of news we want. If you're sitting home, the fact that a fight between Jim Acosta and the president was the lead story for a couple of days out of Washington is pathetic.
And CNN knows it. And CNN knows they're going to get it. It's to the point where Acosta gets up and just starts saying, don't you think that, that's not a question. And the president says, all right, come on, let's go. Like it's a fight. Okay, Jim, let's go. Like two guys in the locker room. And it may be wonderful television, and you're right. They get 2, 3, 4, 5 days of news out of it. And it goes on, and it's like everyone has to go to CNN or Fox, wherever they want to go for it. But it's not it's not journalism, and it's not government. It's not. It's something else. Liz, I think our time has run out.
Okay, so we're going to have Rick Wilson on next week or soon.
We'll have to get Rick on again. Yeah, he must have gotten tied up. But Liz, thank you for being on again with me and during my rant.
And Billy, thanks. And I say this every week, but I thanks for the service you did for Molinaro and you've done for other candidates. It's so important that we get people to run for office, and they won't run unless they can surround themselves with really, A+ teams, and you've done it. So you've earned a break. I hope you're going to have a big fat Thanksgiving with your whole family. We'll have one more show before then. But,
and the good news about American politics is you can only come in second usually. That's not so bad.
You're the runner-up.
Exactly. You get a badge in some places for that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for being on.
Happy Veterans Day. And thanks for
Talk to you next week. Thanks, all.